run across in looking through a few books. I think for me, I'm not as offended when I see or hear references to goats, but I think it should be done in a way that is informed and particularly in a sense of not humiliating or scaring a candidate so much as remembering that anti-Masonic sentiment is real. It's dangerous for our organization. At times, has led to Masons being killed in massive numbers, and I'm sure Odd Fellows have suffered that at various times as well. And the people who were suffering in that sense, the brothers who were suffering in that sense, dealt with those very real dangers by turning it into a joke and insulating themselves with humor. And for that reason, I think the goat had a very important historic meaning for some Masons, but only in that context. There does not to appear, as Alex has said, to have ever been instances, unless they were anomalies, of candidates actually riding goats in degrees. The closest we could get to that would be a very loose interpretation of a canvas.
Right.
And that's what I have.
That situation, I think, would almost be considered an innovation, because I don't think that's intended in that particular portion of the degree.
Using a canvas?
No, not using no, God, no. Trying to get me shot up. No, like trying to do the kicking and stuff and turn it into a goat symbolism.
Gotcha.
I would say it would be an innovation on the actual meaning and purpose of that legend in the degree.
Yep.
So I'm going through when I wrote the book for Gardner Lodge, I heavily relied on the Grand Lodge annual proceedings, and I not able to find it here at the moment. I'm looking through, but there was actually a quote that I remember at the time cracked me up, where the Grand Secretary kind of laid it out about the use of the goat and whatnot, but I'm unable to find that. However, searching through some of these, I am finding several references that almost seem to go back and forth as far as the manner in which it's used. We find, well, let me see here. I find a couple references where it's almost calling a group of Masons goats. And I guess I'll read it off here and see what you think. But it almost seems in a derogatory manner at some point. This specific one here, this is out of the 1870 proceedings. Quote goes, "There are some of the inducements that operate to render counterfeit or spurious metal current, and so long and wherever this is the case, we shall find a huddle of goats that wear the lambskin on them." Don't know where they're going with that, but it kind of went along with, let me find this other one that I just read here. Yeah, here's another. This is out of the 1905 annual proceedings, saying here, "These fellows are a fair sample of some of the goats that creep into our lodges and don the lambskin." What do you think? That almost sounds like they're trying to call somebody out.
Yeah.
So we obviously see in my jurisdiction, this is been a long time thing. But at the same time, it's also been a long time thing with people on both sides of the fence. But yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting that some of these guys are using the term against the other ones.
Almost like a wolf in sheep's clothing, kind of.
Precisely. Another thing coming to my mind here that still kind of cracks me up / irks me to this day, as we were talking about earlier, on both sides of the fence, with some of the anti-sentiments. Back in the day, we had a lot of publications that were anti-Masonic put out there, and they would paint Masonry in a certain picture, and goats were widely used in that, kind of mocking the degrees, making, just crazy and pitiful or daunting. Believe it or not, to this day, my lodge in the Tyler's Quarter has like 8 or 9 of these old original prints framed up, and there's the goats all over the place. And I've mentioned on several occasions, like, these are all anti-Masonic, right? We even had a Missouri, basically the whole lodge came to visit us, and that was they were just kind of standing there staring at him and kind of looked at me. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, but it's one of those things that's been on the wall forever, so nobody
were they anti-Masonic, or were they Masonic produced in response to the anti-Masonic accusations or jokes? I know what I'm trying to pinpoint is a subtle difference, but I think it's a difference nonetheless, in the kind of way that a
almost
victim,
like a meme that we would share today.
Yeah. Well, the way a bully victim will turn an insult into a victory. Go ahead.
No, to be fair on that, I guess I would really have to do the research on where that public. I mean, these are cutouts from my interpretation, and obviously I'm coming here with a bias. So from my interpretation, they come off as the anti-Masonic prints. I don't know who published those. So, I mean, there is the possibility that it did come from a Masonic source. And, that actually kind of interests me. I'm going to have to try to see if I can trace back, if there is any information on there for me to trace back to see where that came from. Personally, I want to say it's anti-Masonic just by looking at it. I don't think I would, at least, I mean, by the images portrayed in there, I would hope that a Mason didn't put those out, especially in those time periods when, I mean, we're pretty serious today about divulging too much information, but especially in that time period, I don't think that would have been taken too kindly for as far as what they depict.
So I've got a pretty elaborate example of the kind of turning the thing on its head for the sake of humor. If one of you guys have something else you want to throw in before I do this, it's like I said, it's elaborate. It's a little long, but I think it's enjoyable. I think the listeners and hopefully you two guys will get a laugh out of it, which was the point of the original thing in the first place.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Ainsley.
I feel like, before you go into that, I guess the only thing that I guess from listening to you guys and kind of feeling like the tone of the goat was used as more of like almost like sort of like to try to make it seem like you guys were either doing some sort of like pseudo sexual witchcraft occulty stuff with the goat, like, riding the goat obviously will have, some certain kind of negative connotations and, euphemisms for other things. And I feel like as far as like in Oddfellows, the tone of it was never quite as aggressively negative or maybe pursued as hard as a kind of a defrauding kind of device. So maybe that's why we kind of use it more of like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. Like you'll see old photos of parades and there'll be like a goat, like actually like they'll have goats like in the parade. So I'm wondering if there's maybe the fact that you guys were like the butt of like the joke way more so, it seems, and hurt more by the joke than it was a little bit more casual, maybe like a casual bad joke against the Oddfellows.
Yeah, I can see the difference you're drawing there, and definitely.
I feel like maybe it just kind of like the teasing was taken to a whole other level with the Masons and accusing, with the Luciferianism and all the kind of like, and that definitely that connection does not get, I've not seen that made at all in Odd Fellowship as far as the Lucifer connection, because we don't have anything that I guess somebody could maybe latch onto that could maybe be construed as that. So, because so-and-so mentioned in this one book on this one thing, and that means da-da-da, conspiracy theory wormhole of, this one thing means this, that, I feel like, just from the start, I definitely think the Freemasons get a more scrutiny than the Oddfellows by far. So, but yeah, sorry. Continue with what you were gonna.
No, that's good, and I think really useful. Also, you know what I got to say, Masons aren't very good at laughing at themselves.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. I have one of the worst sense of humors when it comes to myself, and at the same time, Freemasonry has helped really improve that flaw of mine. So. There may be an element of that as well, and that maybe Freemasons got attacked with it more because they were so susceptible to it by taking themselves too seriously is a tricky thing to say, because I don't know that you can take Freemasonry too seriously personally. But we should all there should be a balance of jocularity and reverence, and you lean too far in one way and you become vulnerable. So here's what I've got. I'm going to read it. It's got the intro. This was printed nationally in a Freemasons magazine in the 1860s, and it introduces itself. We give place to the following in our pages to gratify a fun-loving brother who thinks particularly well of it as an extravagant and ridiculous burlesque of the popular superstitious conceptions which, mainly through the influence of bigotry and priestcraft, have obtained among the more ignorant classes of people, especially in Catholic countries, in reference to the mysterious ceremonies and diabolical transactions which take place in our lodges. That essentially lays out exactly what I'm saying, that it identifies a few of the sources of the ridicule. It mentions Catholic. For the record, I'm not anti-Catholic. I'm very Catholic. I'm what they call Catholic light Episcopalian, but it's very well known that, especially in that time, the Catholic Church sought to undermine Freemasonry. It also mentions bigots as being other than the priests. So it's they were pointing out that it wasn't just Catholic oppression, that there was political or other attackers, which we know of the anti-Masonic party. As it laid out, this is something a brother wrote that is based on the kinds of jokes and accusations being made by anti-Masons at the time, for the sake of making us laugh at and realize just how ridiculous the accusations were. I flatter myself I understand something about secret societies. I've had a passion for that sort of thing ever since I was old enough to tell lies. I have scouted around pretty extensively among the different organizations. I've been an Orange Man, and a Fenian, and a Good Templar, and a counterfeiter, and also a Knight of Malta. I have belonged to the Sons of Temperance, and the Odd Fellows, and the Young Men's Christian Association, and the Band of Hope, and a band of robbers. I've been into everything, and I thought I knew everything. Almost, but I didn't. 3 months ago, I became infatuated with Masonry, and since I joined that organization, I've discovered that there are several things connected therewith that outsiders don't know just a pretty good deal about. Now, Mr. Editor, I propose making these secrets public, not out of compassion for my fellow men who may be tending towards Masonry and act as a warning, and so on, because I haven't got a spark of human kindness in my breast, and would rather see every mother's son put to the torture than not, but because I have a spite against the fellows who initiated me, who made the irons too hot and the goat too frisky, and treated me with a roughness generally that the occasion did not warrant. Before fulminating my narrative, I will state, for the benefit of those who don't know, that Masonry is about 600,000 years old. It was old when the fraternity got into trouble at the Tower of Babel, and it was old when Adam first put on his apron as Grand Master in the Eden Lodge. As an aside, I'd like to point out that I think the satirical author who wrote this was absolutely wanting to point out how ridiculous and unfounded the rumors about Freemasonry were, as much as he was wanting to point out how ridiculous some of the claims made by actual Freemasons about our history or symbolism were, or origins for that matter. As a more convincing proof of its antiquity, I would just mention that a party of miners the other day in one of their excavations came upon the petrified remains of a Masonic lodge, with the members in their places and all complete. and eminent geologists who have examined the fossils are of the opinion that these bodies have been embedded in the rock for more than 15,000 years. On the evening I was to be initiated, I made my will and took a most affecting leave of my family. Thus prepared, I started for the lodge, accompanied by Brother John Smith, S.R.S.P.T., who was to see me through. We had no difficulty getting past the first entrance, but when we knocked at the second, a flat little fellow looked out through a round hole in the door and put this startling insticatory to Brother Smith. Chitux cronkai. That's as good as I can do for the extremely long word. To which Brother Smith replied, Chitux cronkai nix my dolly wackadoo. The little fellow then said, Vladzets com tum tum tum. And my conductor, giving a satisfactory answer, we were permitted to enter. Before I had time to look around me, a long-legged fellow knocked me over with a club. He then stood me on my feet, and another marauder made a rush at me and brought me down again. After I had undergone this exhilarating exercise for about 5 minutes, they stretched me out on a bench and examined my teeth and pinched my muscles and stuck pins into me all over and shoved cayenne pepper up my nose and poured molten lead in my trouser pockets and pulled hairs out of the back of my neck with red-hot pincers with a view, I suppose, to make me feel unembarrassed and at home. When I came to my senses, I was alone in the anteroom of the lodge. It was a lively and cheerful apartment. A couple of crocodiles were amusing themselves in a corner, and a few full-grown rattlesnakes were practicing the flying trapeze on the stovepipe. The furniture consisted chiefly of half a dozen mummies, the skeletons of Captain Kidd, Lucretia Borgia, Guy Fawkes, Jack the Giant Killer, Oliver Cromwell, the Wandering Jew, William the Conqueror, Christopher Columbus, and Dick Turpin. A flying machine, 3 barrels of gunpowder, and a remarkably healthy and well-developed wild cat. Just then, a half-dozen pirates, clad in aprons and sashes, rushed into the room with a whoop. One of them, the biggest and ugliest, who appeared to be the chief, ordered the attendants in a voice of thunder to trot out the animal. The attendants disappeared, but immediately reappeared, leading an iron-clad goat. A regular double-decker with 16 horns, a pair of wings and 7 or 8 tails stuck all over him. My eyes were bandaged, and I was told to mount. I said, Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me, I would rather not. I'm not accustomed to going up in a balloon. Besides, I've got an engagement downtown. My wife wants to see me particularly. I'll be back in a few minutes. I rather think my house is on fire, but I'll be back in a few minutes. Ye gentlemen, in a few, before I could finish my sentence, I was seized from behind and planted firmly astride the infernal goat. Somebody then said, let go, and away we went. I've been through a good many perilous scenes. I've taken part in an election fight. I've been down in a railway collision and up in a steamboat explosion. I've fallen down 3 flights of stairs and walked out of a 4th-story window, but this goat excursion was a little ahead of them all. When I come to reflect on the matters in cold blood, I wonder that I ever came out alive. The furious beast kicked and screamed and rolled over and turned back somersaults and front somersaults and drove me against the ceiling and underneath the chairs till the bandage fell from my eyes and I had to let go. The goat vanished up the chimney in a blue flame, and I found myself in the center of the lodge room with about 50 masons in aprons and nothing else, dancing a war dance around me. The rest of the members were standing on their heads in the different corners, all but the cadaverous-looking buccaneer, who seemed to be the head of the department. Soon they left off dancing and marched round the room, chanting an inspiriting dirge. I was then hauled up in front of the chief's desk, who thus addressed me, Brother Cobb, you are now one of us. You are a member of an institution that has lasted over 3 million years. You are impervious to mundane influences. You are waterproof and fireproof. You are overproof. You can walk through the river or sit on a red-hot stove with impunity. Mortal man cannot harm you, and the devil himself must curl up his tail and walk off at your approach. Be virtuous, Mr. Cobb, and you will be happy. I then assumed a sash and apron. So, completely ridiculous. Absolutely unbelievable. But this was something that, at least according to the intro in that magazine in the 1860s, was expected to cause Masons to laugh across the country at a time when they were being persecuted. We were just coming out of an era when it was dangerous to go to the lodge. Guys were in fear that someone would set it ablaze in the middle of a meeting. That was a real worry. So I think it was coming out of that they were making jokes like this. Unfortunately, we mentioned earlier in the show that clandestine masonry is a problem. I think it is actually jokes or accusations or publications like this that a lot of clandestine Masons got a hold of at one point or another and tried to develop their bogus ritual on. And that's where we end up with cases in the news where just a few years ago there was a bogus lodge up in the New York area where a guy was killed doing some ridiculous stuff in an initiation that had no real basis in Masonry, but maybe could have come from some of these ridiculous
Is that the guy that had gotten shot because there was supposed to be a blank in the pistol and the old guy didn't load it correctly or had an actual live round?
Yeah, that's exactly
about that when it happened. I remember that was well before I was even involved in anything fraternal, and I remember reading that. The news article had a statement from an official being like, this is not something that is part of our ritual. This is not supposed to be there. They were doing this on their own, unbeknownst to us, and completely tried to separate official from what that lodge had done. And that did stick with me as holy crap. That was...
So this particular parody here that was printed in a Masonic magazine, I didn't really realize till I was reading here with you, Ainsley. It mentions Oddfellows and also mentions the 6 mummies, which the actual reason I found this article was because last week was the 5th of November and I was looking through databases for anything that mentioned both Freemasonry and Guy Fawkes, which in this case was listed as one of the supposed mummies. You guys use full-on coffins and skeletons one way or another. I think it's fairly well known everywhere. Hopefully that doesn't come across as me revealing anything I shouldn't, but
it's something that it's commonly known, but we still, it's one of those things. It's like we don't admit it, but anybody who Googles will find stories of people buying old Oddfellow lodges and finding a secret little hatch with the skeleton and the coffin in it and calling the police, and I'm sitting here thinking why couldn't I have been that lucky?
We crossed one like that not too long, or probably a year or so ago, where same deal. Someone had bought a building and there was an Oddfellows lodge upstairs that had just been untouched forever. Yeah. And in cleaning it out, the guy that was helping them found a casket and was kind of like, what the heck? And opened it up and there was a full skeleton, and they actually traced it to be real human bones, and they freaked out, and someone came forth that I guess had connection to the lodge. Like, whoa, I need to tell you something.
Yeah.
Well, that brings up an interesting topic then. So, and I guess if we're putting you in an uncomfortable position, please let us know.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's not something you're supposed to talk about, we definitely don't want to talk about it. But
yeah, no, absolutely.
If it is okay to admit that y'all use something like that in your ceremonies, then is there reason to believe that it may have been common at some point to use actual bones? I do know, for example, I've been to lodges in other countries, Masonic lodges in other countries, where actual bones and skeletons are currently being used in ante rooms. So would that have ever been expected in an Oddfellows?
I think the best way to answer that question is if you look at the latest selfie I have posted, then that would answer the question.
Okay.
I think another one you're talking
about. Got it.
Yeah. It's definitely still a yes.
Okay, cool.
Not in every single lodge.
Sure.
Some of them use like a paper mache one, which are also, it's interesting. If you go into the collector's market, the paper mache ones are going for almost as much as the real skeletons are now. It's kind of interesting. That's a whole other topic for a whole other discussion. But
so,
yeah.
I'm actually in my lodge office right now, and I have a real skeleton here I can show you. Not exactly what we're talking about, but that's as close as a real skeleton as I get here.
Oh, that's awesome.
The bat, nice.
Yeah, it's a bat.
You? But to that topic, I do know of, and I won't say who they are. I just to be nice, but I know of several lodges in the United States that have real, or at least they claim to have real human skulls in use for chamber reflection purposes.
Mhm.
But I mean, those are pricey and hard to come by. So
Yeah. And definitely, I mean, with anything Oddfellows, we are definitely a lot more short-handed on new items than anything that Masons could, there's very few, like pretty much we're in a very DIY recycle kind of lodges close, and we take them and disperse it through everything else. So yeah, there's been a lot of skeletons changing hands and moving around, and I've got probably I have.
are you sitting there counting your skeletons?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm like the home for wayward coffins. So there's only one that's real, if that makes any difference. But the rest are ritual coffins, but they only contain the simulations, not the. I've got one that's real that we will use when we do our initiations, but everything else is not. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, as I was digging through some of these I did find one remark here that kind of made me giggle as I was reading through it. This is out of the 1930 annual proceedings where they are, I guess, dealing with the frustration of taxes invading Masonic lodges, as we, deal with today commonly as well. And the remark that he put in here is, let me see, the Kansas Supreme Court, which provides for the taxing on these Masonic temples, have now taxed all of our other properties, from the lodge goat to our finest structures.
That's pretty funny.
There's a hint of subtle frustration coming through.
So we're lucky in Texas. We are actually Masonic lodges are tax exempt in Texas.
Is that right?
Yeah, so we don't pay taxes on our properties and stuff like that.
I don't know if I should comment on that or not, but they're working on that in Kansas. They're currently fighting us on it, but our Kansas Masonic Foundation is helping us with legal to get that done. They've granted it for at least a couple Masonic lodges and some other orders, but it goes through on a single by single basis. And I think now that they're seeing more of these come through, they're like, whoa. And I mean, they've got nothing to lose, right? So, well, I mean, they do. If they grant it, they lose all the taxes. So why not? They're just denying everything right now. So it's a continued fight, but that would make a huge difference. Not to change the entire conversation to that, but would make a big difference. Well, Robert, what else you got?
I don't know that I have anything else.
Well, you did mention before we got into this, I'd asked you what your thought on it being involved into a degree, like we talked about earlier, what your personal thought was, if it should be there or not. Now that we've touched on some of the history, what would your thought be on it, at least associating it with our actual rituals versus a funny pastime comment?
I get you. In practice, I tend to stay away from the goat thing. I will tell you that when I was initiated at this lodge, they had, and it's still here, we don't use it, but a varmint call that makes a goat sound. And it was actually used during the blindfolded circumambulation, which I think is really lame and obviously going way too far. Very irreverent, much too jocular. The balance has obviously been thrown out of whack when you're doing stuff like that.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of saying to guys, uh, "Oh, is the goat ready?" and stuff like that right before their degree. If you're gonna make a joke, I would at least ask that it be not on the same day as a guy's degree. So if it's like really early in the process, you've just met the guy and you just want to kind of throw a little joke out there about riding a goat, that's okay, especially and probably should be done with a very clear sense of this is a completely ridiculous idea, so let's laugh about it together, not I'm going to throw this out there to try to make you nervous. In all reality, if you're out there and you think it's fun to make a guy nervous by talking about goats before he gets initiated, I would just stress that it's not necessary. You're going to take a man and blindfold him, undress him, put him in a costume, and you're going to lead him into a strange room that may have strange smells if you're using incense, or if you're not using incense, either way. But he's barefoot. He's vulnerable. He's blind. He's nervous already. I mean, there's really no need to try to intensify that. So I think it's an unnecessary joke in that sense. The only place and definitely you asked specifically in relation to use during or with a degree. I just don't really think it's necessary or needed there or useful in any way. But in the historical sense, where we were kind of taking ownership of something that had been used against us, I think there's a lesson there from the goat that we would all do well to learn. Currently, nationally, the biggest way in which a symbol is being misused to put masonry in a bad light would probably be the Eye of Providence, which I'm guessing is the same eye that's behind you there, Ainsley.
Yeah.
And if you show that,
one of the reasons for a lot of that kind of confusion between Oddfellows and masonry and the copying, because we both use the all-seeing eye, but we all know where it came from before any of us came along. So, and it's such a universal symbol anyway that it belongs to so many cultures that
right.
Back to Egypt,
Yeah, exactly. Which in that sense maybe then doesn't belong to any culture, and that's really the point of all these symbols. There's truth in these symbols. They may be depicted slightly differently here and there, but we don't own that any more than Oddfellows do. So I really appreciate what you're saying there. But if you show that symbol to a lay person on the street right now, instead of any notion of Providence or the Egyptian god Ra or whatever else we would probably think of when looking at it, you're going to have them immediately talking about Illuminati, New World Order, the creepy ideas that have been built
Big
around
Brother's
that.
watching, kind of. Yeah.
Big Brother watch. That's actually, exactly. And I think that's a shame. So in that sense, perhaps the Eye of Providence is currently the goat or the skull of modern fraternities in America, in the way that goats and skulls in the 1840s, 1830s were being used to put us in a bad light. So the lesson to be learned then would be to figure out a way to regain ownership of the symbol of the Eye of Providence in a way that defeats the anti-Masonic causes of today.
I guess one way to look at it is that the goat is almost like the goat's the member of the lodge that nobody really wanted, and you have to figure out how to get along with, in a way, Like,
yeah, that's a great way.
Stuck with you got, but yeah, definitely like with the eye, it definitely gets turned into a more sinister, nefarious thing because they're like, oh well, it's on the back of your money, so that means it's it's indisputable. It's on your money. That's what it means. It's the Illuminati. I mean, it's some of the conclusions of it gets into like the flat Earth territory of conspiracy theories. Of,
Yeah.
The robot voice on a YouTube video, like drawing these really weird, random, distant, like trying to connect dots that are not connected, but they're like, see, it's so obvious. It's all in plain sight. And it's, yeah, definitely. If like you look at the symbols of both our orders, and a lot of them are just, they're so universal. A lot of them are, out of Judeo-Christian backgrounds. Obviously the goat has a lot of pagan, things that kind of are attached to it. And obviously that's why it would be a good thing for the anti-Masonic movement or any of the more of like the church-based anti-fraternalism books that were coming out in the 1800s, trying to align it more with this either like satanic or witchcraft or pagan or this impure bad thing that you don't know what you're getting into, and then you get into it and the next thing you know, oh my God, I'm a witch, and I feel like that's how they try to make it sound now, especially with like the Masons, where it's like, oh well, the lower level Masons, they don't know, but when you get up to those upper degrees, that's when they reveal the truth to you. And it's I don't know if it's like you get like a special green bean salad that you're like the final casserole or something.
There's certain things we can't disclose. You get into the green beans, I got to cut you off.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll back away from the green bean casserole and the cake, because I know that's
that everybody knows that's what the G stands for, is green beans and goats.
Right.
You can tune in at our sister podcast. The G is for gossip, goats, and green beans. To learn more about that, and girls.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like a lot of these symbols are like what are drawing people, like the younger people, to it. Like they're intrigued by like the eye or the skull or whatever other symbols. Like in Oddfellows, the three links or the heart and hand are probably our two big immediate identifiers, and people get drawn in by that because they do want to know what is behind it and what's interesting about it. And I don't know with Masonic stuff how it works as far as cleaning up ritual or whatever they try to kind of parade it as, by actually eliminating a lot of stuff and streamlining. But, we have a lot of talks of that in Oddfellows, and there's a lot of debate on how to go forward and keep, modern, but also, let's reevaluate some of these changes that we've made historically, and are they still relevant, and do we still need them? And I definitely hope that like the symbols, as misconstrued as they can be by people who are on the outside, but a lot of it is also very common knowledge that it's like, well, what does that mean to you? Well, that's what it means to us. But there's also some further stuff. But at the base level, I mean, you're going to be like, well, what does an eye do? It sees, it looks, it's, and kind of getting into, well, something looking at you, but you looking out. And it's there's just such a beauty there. And it kind of sucks that like I'm going on a total other tangent with things, but to try to latch onto like one little thing and use that one little thing to try to flip it and harm the groups, and try to turn that one little thing that's such a rich, valuable lesson and turn it into this total other thing that has absolutely nothing to do with the lesson that it contains or the reminders that are there. And it's kind of sad because like, with me, like, all half of my shirts are either for my tattoo shop or they're like Oddfellow shirts. And I'll also have shirts from like some other companies that'll have kind of esoteric look and stuff. But if you look at like the pop culture trend of like the occult esoteric imagery, and you look at like, obviously there's a big design by people who don't know anything about fraternalism, and they're just kind of taking like a mishmash of things and putting them together because it looks cool. But they'll be like, okay, skull, that looks cool. Ooh, eye, that looks cool. And they'll kind of like make a cool looking picture that it looks like it should mean something deeper than it really does, but it's really just a cool looking picture. But at the same time, it's like almost like, is there a way we could kind of key into that be like, hey, that's a cool picture you made. Why don't I teach you a little bit more about that? And I feel like there's like opportunities for both our groups to kind of use that almost as like a way to use the ignorance that is being spewed, but like the people who might be casually tuning in and catching that bad stuff, and try to catch those people before they get sucked too far in to the lies and the misinformation, and assume that like we're all, you know, like we're all gonna like Illuminati confirmed, and we're all having secret meetings where we're gonna like talk about how we're gonna take over the world next or something. And really we're just hanging out and having fun with our friends and doing some good stuff for the community, or, you know, just talking about life and how to make ourselves better people. So it's kind of one of those things that's like, it makes it seem more complicated and convoluted in ways that it's influential, in ways that it's not. It turns it into something it's not, but also kind of lies in a way that people come into it thinking it's going to be this thing. And then you're like, this isn't what I thought it would be at all. Like, where's my secrets to the world and my $1 million I thought I was going to win or something, you know? So
You didn't get yours?
I didn't get my $1 million from the,
Oh.
I'm in the wrong group. I'll have to join that Illuminati Brotherhood that keeps messaging me, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you're getting all those too, right?
Yeah. We so funny thing, a brother Mason down in Laredo, Ruben Bassan, he started trolling those bots and scammers who
Nice.
try to recruit you to the Illuminati with a very, very specific theme, the tomato garden. So he responds to these guys who are promising him all this wealth and fame and everything. He's like, okay, so that, you know, that Lamborghini sounds cool, but I've always wanted the tomato garden. Could you guys provide me with the tomato garden? And you can tell in the responses, he shares screenshots, and he'll have these guys going for days on end, where their responses, they're clearly just baffled at, well, why the hell the guy's asking for it, and they're just like, yeah, sure, we'll give you a damn tomato garden, just send us your money.
Yeah.
It's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I as like a social media admin, I have to delete comments spamming all the time and banning people, and it's just it sucks that scammers are trying to take advantage of like our charity or our charitableness, I guess.
Sure.
So try to be like, oh, well, y'all are a bunch of suckers probably because you give people money, so you better give me money. And, you know, it's kind of one of those things that I don't think it's working. So I don't, you know what I mean? I can't imagine anybody is that at this point in the internet game, like as far as like it being like I'm a Nigerian prince and you've won the lottery kind of level of bad scamminess to it.
Sadly, and I don't know of particular cases of it working, but sadly, I think, yeah, to you, me, and Alex, it's like unfathomable that somebody would be prone to that kind of a scam. But odds are those people have success with the same demographic that they have success in the general population, which are the older guys.
Yeah.
And that's probably a big reason they're targeting fraternities like the Odd Fellows or Freemasonry. Our average age is pretty high right now.
Yeah.
And between being a charitable organization and being an older organization, we're kind of a soft target for stuff like that.
Yeah. And definitely, you know, oh, I want to join. How can I join? There's nothing, you know, it's definitely a lot of it is like trying to hook you and lead you into a conversation. And then there comes the, like, because you want to treat everybody, you don't want to profile, you want to treat everybody as an interested candidate. But then it's like you get a couple messages in and then it definitely, like, you're like, all right, I had my ideas that this was going to go this way, and here it is. And then I got to figure out how to back out of this convo without looking like a jerk, because I'm representing my entire order by talking to you as the webmaster. So it's like, how do I manage this without, you know, making an embarrassment of anybody or appearing a certain way? which is it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and it takes time away from everybody's lives. Yeah, it takes away. Yeah, the goat gets lonely.
Yeah.
Well, Ainsley, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show tonight. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening and offering up your expertise this evening to fill us in on not just the GOAT, but also on the just kind of the all-around nature of Oddfellows for all of us that have been interested. I want to go ahead and take this time to send it around for some final thoughts and also give you an opportunity to throw out any contact information for you,
Awesome.
your lodge. I know you've got a tattoo business. Any way people can get a hold of you, learn more, and if they want to talk about it, continue to just a way to drop a line to you.
Cool. I'll go first then. So yeah, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, I'm pretty easy to find online on Facebook, Instagram, whatever. My tattoo shop is Vintage Karma, 2 words, Vintage Karma. And so if you look me up on Instagram, my Instagram handle is @VintageKarma. And you can just look me up by my name on Facebook, pretty easy to find. And if you want to learn more about the Oddfellows, definitely check out ioof.org. And if you have any questions, if there's a lodge near you or anything like that, and you need help finding somebody or getting somebody to contact you, like I know I sent you people for Kansas. Yeah, just pop a message into that contact box and I'll get back to you with some info. Also, I have me and a friend from Arkansas. We run a blog called Heart and Hand, and it's at oddfellowsguide.com. So if anybody wants to read some kind of up-to-date Oddfellow writings, that's pretty much the place to go to. And if you want to follow the Oddfellows on Instagram, it's at _odd_fellows. Yep.
Very well. Well, thank you again for coming on, man. I guess for my final thoughts, still kind of in the same spot for me personally. It's not going to go anywhere. I mean, obviously in today's day and age, the references are there. People find light in it. I guess kind of as we connected tonight, I see it on 2 levels. Probably a lot of the guys that are making those jokes really aren't as deep into it as I would like them to be. But I see that taken away from everyone else's experience to a degree. You know, I've read historically in some of the manuscripts of why it came around was some of the guys were trying to scare people out of it before they reached their 3rd degree, because then it meant they weren't worthy if they couldn't make it all the way through. You know, I don't know. There's a lot to be said there, but I don't think that has anything to do with who deserves to go through. The morals and the lessons and everything that go into it are very specific. And I think by putting the emphasis here, we're really taking away from what they should be taken away. Personal opinion. So, I mean, you know, all in all, I'm not a crazy fan of seeing it around. Just, you know, as I mentioned, the external precept of how the community outward sees us. Oh, I'm sorry. My Siri keeps wanting to join in the conversation. The external precept, how the community sees us outrightly, they get exploded with this stuff. And it's almost like with it coming from Masons, it's just a confirmation, both of, you know, connecting their sinister thoughts or just that it's a joke from both sides there. But definitely more than anything, I would just plead, if you're going to make the jokes, whatever, fine, but it really has no place in the degree work. Personal opinion, as I've heard, there's other, at least a jurisdiction that does see that it does. Personally, I just think that's unfortunate. But I'll kick it over to Robert for your final thoughts.
My final thoughts on Oddfellows. Thanks so much, Mr. Hellick, for, did I say that right, Hellick?
Hellick. It's
Hellick. For enlightening us on the Oddfellows. I've always found it to be an interesting organization. If Freemasonry didn't already eat up so much of my time, I'd probably look rather seriously into the Oddfellows. Maybe will someday. It's interesting to see some of the parallels as well as some of the differences. Thanks a lot for giving us a tour of your lodge. A lot of times our listeners ask me whenever I visit their lodges, well, should I listen on Spotify or should I watch on YouTube? And in this case, we've got an episode here where it would definitely be worth it to watch the footage. And as for goats, I think I've laid out a fairly reasonable argument in favor of the goat's place in history of Freemasonry.
Sure.
It definitely served a valuable purpose, but it's hard to make an argument for it currently, unless all parties involved are well aware that it's a joke and it's not happening at a time when jokes aren't appropriate. So even then, I don't know what it would add to anyone's experience. And that's what I've got on goats and Oddfellows. I would also like to thank Brother Powers for finally letting us know what the G stands for in Alex G. Powers.
Touche.
Yeah, I
Goat
think it's just
hater.
a testament to technology and social media being used for good things, which a lot of people think is good for nothing now. But the fact that, you commented on on one of Carl's things, right? And then I commented, and then then here we are, it just starts with a comment or a post on Facebook, and here we are. And I think that's, social media done right.
Exactly. Yeah. There is definitely things out there to learn besides the joke factor. So yeah, this was definitely a very beneficial and enlightening conversation. Dude, so much appreciate. I didn't even comment on the Oddfellows side of this program. I guess I'll apologize firsthand to the viewers and listeners. This is probably one of the longest episodes of Historical Light we've done, but I think it's also one of the most in-depth. Really, I mean, we're covering two topics here, right? The first half of the show, we really dove into Oddfellows and some kind of the crossover connections between the two organizations, and then we tackled that subject of the GOAT. So hopefully you guys stuck around. If you need to watch it in two parts, definitely do that. But I think we got some really valuable information and discussion going through the entire thing. So I hope you enjoy there. I would definitely advise you guys to check us out on the Facebook group. That is the Historical Light Masonic Research Group on Facebook, where we always continue the conversation of the show there. If you're not a member, make sure you go there, click join, and get in on those conversations. There's a ton of Masonic Facebook groups out there, Facebook groups in general, but we really try to keep this one very specific, as so many of the other groups are just kind of a plethora for anything and everything. Our Facebook group for Historical Light is strictly history. We vet those comments. We keep everything into the Masonic research and Masonic history origin. If it's not that, it's not going to be on there. If it gets on there, we're going to get it off of there. So keep that in mind. If you have any interest in Freemasonry, click on and join that group. Ainsley, you can definitely get in on there as well. It's not
awesome.
Freemasons, but anyone that has an interest in that subject. So as we continue the conversation there, someone might want to holler at you about some of those cross connections as well. And that'd be a great place to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd love to, in the future be on your show or vice versa. If I get my blog going for the blog, then,
that
definitely
fantastic.
Because I feel like we just barely scratched that surface of the crossover as well. There's so much that, our commonality that I feel like we could all learn from one another. And
for sure.
Yeah, I think, kind of coming from a place of learning as opposed to a competitive standpoint, which I think some people think it has to be competition, and it doesn't. There's room for, it's not like you got to pick.
Yeah. Well, in closing, let's do this. We will continue the conversation in the group. Awesome. I'm challenge everybody to listen to those comparisons that we went through and bring up anything else that maybe you have questions on in deeper, or maybe that we didn't touch on. And we will go ahead and right now plan a part 2 of the comparisons between Oddfellows and Freemasons. And we'll make sure that we continue that conversation. So if you're in that group, make sure you drop us a line on what you thought about the episode, what you thought about the comparisons, what other questions you might have. And we'll make sure we have a part 2 and we'll dig into it even deeper, because I can guarantee, like you're saying, that it's a very true statement of we could probably do 5 or 6 episodes on just that. I know in Freemasonry, I describe it as an onion a lot. You can really go as many layers deep as you like to. And I'm sure a lot of that resembles over into the Oddfellows as well. So I think we could have some lively conversations there.
Absolutely.
One thing Brother Robert touched on was our sister podcast. I do want to give them a shout out. That is the G is for Gossip. It's a new podcast and YouTube show like this that's hit the market. They're doing something really unique and interesting. So they're talking about everything in Freemasonry, right? They're touching on all the subjects and their thoughts on it, but from a different perspective than we've seen before. They're doing it from the ladies' perspective, and that's kind of like a weird subject in Freemasonry, right? We don't have ladies, but Masons have ladies. So this show is taking everything in Freemasonry from the wives and the girlfriends and the ladies' perspective of how they address to it, how they relate to the teachings of stuff in Masonry that gets brought home, how it affects their family, how it just affects them being involved by dating or being married to a Mason, and how that all translates out. So it's a really cool show. They're just getting started out. I want you guys to go check them out. They're all over the place as well. They're Facebook, everywhere. So give them a listen, give them a view, and show them some love. I think they got a great thing going on, and I want to see it expand for them. I'm really proud of what they're doing. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had, and hopefully grow the community of Masonic ladies out there to come a little more tight-knit, because I think that does play in very well. As we always mention at, Grand Lodge festivities and everything else, it's important to thank the ladies, because we can't do what we do without their support, at least not well. It doesn't translate over. So with that, I know we've covered a ton tonight. I hope you all enjoyed, and definitely go check out the Facebook group for more. If you do enjoy Historical Light, you can definitely support the show by going to the website, click on, contribute, something like that. Totally forgetting, drawing a blank here, but you can do that safely and securely through the means of PayPal, and keep the lights on for the show. We'd greatly appreciate your support. But until next time, protect history, seek light. This is all we got, guys. Masonic history is what it is. It's disappearing before our eyes. So go out there, research, recover, and promote it. Until next time, we'll see you in the group. Keep seeking light. See you, brothers.